What is your job, and what does your day in the life look like? I'm an archaeologist. A lot of archaeologists like me work in the construction industry, rather than for a university or a museum. Basically, anytime someone wants to build something, the land has to get surveyed for anything that could be archaeologically significant. My company gets hired to survey the site. If we find stuff, we often get hired to dig it up. Most days are spent walking through woods and farmer fields. We check for evidence of sites, dig small test pits, and make lots of maps. Sometimes we find a cool site and get to spend a few weeks fully excavating it. I want this job. What education do I need for it? Literally sounds amazing. I'm actually studying for this at the University of Arkansas right now. You need an anthropology degree with a subset in archaeology. I believe you can go through a hands-on program as well, but in going the academic route. I distribute and translate board games. It's about as exciting as you'd expect. Those of us in the hobby appreciate your work. Happy to be of service. Tips imaginary hat. I service swimming pools in Florida. I do 20 a day, 100 a week. I balance chemicals and make these pools pretty for my homie owners. Even after 20 years at the same company, I still love my job. Not to be crude. Just curious, don't you find your job repetitive? How do you still stay on the same job and love it? Sorry if I sound condescending, but I'm actually in awe. I'm afraid that I won't love my career in the long run someday. Few people can attain a job they love. Find the job you don't mind doing. I'm an undertaker, and depending on the day, I bring deceased into my care from hospital mortuaries, or sometimes during the day I will get called out to a private address or care home/hospice. Majority of most days I will be out on funerals, driving the hearse/limousine, and bearing the coffin into the crematorium, or lowering into a grave. I will prepare and dress the deceased ready for funerals and viewings. I will also line and fit coffins and engrave nameplates among general cleaning of the funeral home and vehicles. It can be pretty full on physically as well as emotionally, but I really appreciate my job and the comfort I can help bring to some families. I always imagine this as one of the toughest jobs around. Thank you for what you do. Thank you. I appreciate that. It can definitely open your eyes to your own mortality, but also makes me appreciate life and loved ones a lot more. I'm an armed security guard for a nightclub. I get paid by shift, but if you do the math, I make about $35 an hour. I get to work at 9 PM and usually leave around 4 AM. I spend 92% of my nights checking IDs, playing on my phone, and searching people for weapons. 8% of my nights breaking up fights or arguments. But I spend 100% of my nights hoping I don't get jumped, hit with a GL Bud bottle, or shot. Have you ever been jumped, hit with a GL Bud bottle, or shot? Question mark. He's still able to comment on Reddit, so I'm taking that as a good sign lol. I work books in a thrift store. My day is like Christmas morning and a round of Russian roulette all at once, since I never know what's going to be inside a box. 200 Harlequin romance novels, hardcover hand-painted books from the 1700s, a newspaper from the day Kennedy was shot, human teeth, grandma's bank paranoia cash stash, literal cat shit, porn mags. Who knows? Not me. I'm a book editor. Some days usually start with random check-ins and meetings. Most are just checking emails and working. 90% of the time I'm editing spellings, making sure stories are coherent, checking if the plot makes sense, and or editing and adding pictures to books. I work at a CVS pharmacy. It's the worst existence I can think of. Verbal abuse all day every day. The doctor didn't send in your script. My fault. Insurance won't pay for tramadol tablet per day. My fault. Copay too high. Oh geez, sorry, I'll just adjust your insurance formulary for you because I work for your insurance, right? Not to mention the stress of trying to fill 10 scripts in the next 5 minutes while also answering non-stop phone calls only to have someone blow up at you because they had to wait 5 fucking minutes. It makes me want to kill myself. For real. I worked at CVS for 3 years. Only 3 months as a tech. I couldn't begin to handle it. Everything you said is spot on. CVS is hell. I feel bad for the people working CVS by where I live. They are ridiculously understaffed in the pharmacy. I'm a zookeeper. I love it, but for the most part it's pretty unglamorous. I spend 10% of my time talking to the public, 10% of my time playing with animals, 20% doing paperwork, and the other 60% is preparing food or shoveling various forms of poop, and depending on the species, the poop can be easily 1000 times worse than dog or cow poop. I type this comment as I'm just getting home from a day of cleaning the otter enclosure, and my husband still won't enter the room with me even after a shower. I work at Costco. My average day is similar to this. I work at Subway. I normally go in early as hell, so I have time to cry in the cooler for a minute. Former Subway worker. This is so accurate. I work in a group home for the developmentally disabled. My day can have several different ways it can go, but it's usually just hanging out in a nice house helping out some peeps who have trouble with everyday tasks. Some days I'm a nurse, others a personal chef, a handyman, chauffeur, you name it. Same, and I love it. I work 24-hour shifts which involve sleeping in the house. I usually get woken up at 5 AM by a guy singing hallelujah at the top of his lungs. By 7 he's excitedly telling me that the sun is coming out, like it's the first time he's ever seen it. He's in his 70s. Someone might throw a mug at me, but every bit of challenging behavior is worth it for the times I make them smile or laugh, or push themselves to do something new. The downside is about half my day is taken up with paperwork, or talking on the phone to various professionals trying to get them better support. I'm a night watchman at a museum. I patrol the galleries after hours, and in my downtime I'm free to do as I like. A great position as I like to bring work in to do, and my days are free. I can watch TV. I can work on my own art practice. The rare bad day is dealing with monitoring system failure or a facility issue, a busted vac or blown pipes. It's a very chill job with a lot of agency, so long as you don't violate the high level of trust and don't mind the hours. How many times a week do the exhibits come to life? Every day after sunset and before sunrise. School bus driver. 6 AM. Crawl my happy butt out of bed to be at work in 15 minutes. It'll still be dark out when I'm driving most of the route and most of my coworkers will see me. So absolutely no effort goes into looking presentable besides putting clothes on. 6:15. Pre-trip the bus, making sure it isn't going to fall apart or catch on fire. Jenna. Occasionally tell the mechanics something's horribly wrong and have to run to go pre-trip another bus when I can't take mine. If that happens, it becomes blatantly obvious how much of driving a bus is muscle memory as I struggle to do basic things like open the door and set the parking brake. 6:40. Drive around out in the country, playing tag with deer and other small animals, picking up the 4 or so kids that live out there before making my way back into town to pick up more people. Intersperse this with telling elementary school kids to stay TF in their seats around 7:30 or so I'll drop everyone off, post-trip my bus, and go home. 8 o'clock to 11 AM. Mess around at home, not doing any of the productive things I should be doing. I occasionally use this time for a danger nap. That is, a nap I didn't intend to take with no safeguards in place to ensure I actually wake up at the time I'm supposed to. 11:15 to 1 PM. Me and another bus driver take the preschoolers to preschool. It's my job to get them on the bus and buckled in their seats, besides 1 or 2 of them screaming every now and then. This is the easiest part of my job, but because I'm only the aide and not the driver I get paid less, so it'd be real great if my driver finally quits like he says he's been going to for all year. 1 o'clock to 2:30 PM. I get to clean some of the buses they use for activities and field trips. Since the whole coronavirus thing, these buses have basically sat unused, meaning I get free money to invest into $GME. 2:30 to 3:45. Pre-trip the bus, go and pick up the elementary school students. Because of the way things have had to be rescheduled this year, we now have to sit in the high school parking lot with the elementary schoolers on the bus for about half an hour, and it's just as terrible as it sounds. 3:45. 4:50. Take everybody home. My least behaved students are some of the last to get dropped off out in the country, of course. I'm pretty sure at this point my high schoolers and middle schoolers could start a satanic cult in the back of the bus and I wouldn't know or care because I'm too busy dealing with the elementary schoolers in the front of the bus. Get back to the lot. Post-trip the bus again. Plug the bus in. And go home. Edit. I should've done this post on my main. I work in a central kitchen for Meals on Wheels and we provide anywhere from 400 to 600 meals a day for our county. There are only 4 of us that make the food, and one person is in charge of dessert and only works 16 hours a week. We start our day at 4:30 and the meals go out at 10. We rely on volunteers for help serving and delivery. I think our volunteer count was around 200 last I heard. Most of them are retired or people taking time during their lunch break to deliver 10 to 12 meals for their route. All the food is made from scratch and we run our operation out of an old nursing home kitchen. Our equipment is old and a little rundown, but we make it work. Train driver. I arrive and pick up my scheduled card for the day. I read through it and see if there are any safety notices relevant for the day. I make my way to my train either departing from the station or depot. Following the schedule for stopping pattern on that trip. Breaks are put as part of the schedule. Occasionally there are moments to snag a coffee here and there. There may be requirements to travel as a passenger depending on the work. Finishing up may be taking a train back to home station and stabling there / being relieved by a driver or shunting into the depot. I'm currently working as a hospital transporter, meaning I take patients all over the hospital for any reason. Patient is doing better and gets discharged out of the COVID floor into another ward. I take them there. Patient codes and needs to go to the CCU. I also take them there. Someone needs imaging. I take N. Someone needs chemo infused. I take N. Someone needs radiation. I take N. Someone's COVID test came back positive and they need to be moved to the COVID floor. I take N. Someone dies. I take them to the morgue. We use iPhones, and a program notifies me when I have a patient I need to transport. It also tells me if they are on precautions, like with COVID, MRSA, or C. diff. It specifies wheelchair, gurney, or bed. Although I'm allowed to switch stuff out if the patient will still be safe. It will indicate if the patient has tele, needs O2, and if I'm doing a room move. It tells me to bring their chart and their personal belongings. Our inpatient portions of the hospital were built in 3 phases, decades apart. The 2 older parts have much smaller rooms, and it's hard to fit a gurney in. The newest part has huge rooms, so when I'm doing a room move from the new part to an older part, I grab the bed from their new, smaller room and bring it to the big room where they already are. There's just so much more space in the new rooms that it's very easy to fit 2 beds in there for the patient transfer. We usually end up piling all their stuff up on their bed, too, as well as open supplies the original unit used on them, using resources wisely. So once we've moved the patient to the new bed, I just move them to their new room, plug in their stuff, and go. Sometimes I'll get the bed to the patient in their old room they're moving out of, and find that I can just take them in the bed they're already in. Most of our beds are motorized, but we still have 19 that are fully manual. It sucks pushing those ones because they don't steer well. I find myself having to use my upper body strength to keep the bed going straight. So as you can imagine, my upper body strength is good despite not formally working out. I have pecs, and I'm a woman, and I can do well over 20 military style push-ups before my arthritic shoulder hurts too much to continue. The limiting factor is my shoulder, not my muscles. Last night my partner and I had to push a 370-pound dude on a manual bed. Fuck. Sometimes I have to do CCU to imaging, and it will be flagged as a nurse assist. Sometimes it's just one nurse with the patient, hooked up to a bunch of tele. Other times they're ventilated, and then we have 2 nurses plus a respiratory therapist, and the RT is pushing the ventilator. Those are really complicated, because you have all the monitoring equipment packed around the patient on the bed, plus the RT pushing the vent. Plus sometimes a nurse is pushing in 4th pole, if there are too many 4ths to fit on the bed's 4th pole. Space is limited going through doorways, and in elevators. But, if there's a CCU patient, we'll do medical override, so we get priority on the huge elevator, so we can all fit. For morgue transports, I go to the morgue and get the morguecartlink.com/products/hydraulic covered cadaver carrier 600,039H. It's hard to steer, even harder than the non-motorized beds. The morgue itself is small, with less than 10 slots. I've only ever seen it completely full once. I'll take the cart to the patient's room and have someone help me load the body onto the tray in the cart. The nursing staff is responsible for bagging the body, filling out most of the paperwork, and coordinating with the family about picking up personal belongings. Once the body is loaded, I take it back to the morgue. I have to transfer the body and the tray the body is on to a lift, and then slide the tray plus body into the refrigerated morgue slot. Last weekend I had 4 morgue runs on one night shift, which is my personal record. To work COVID, I still have to put on all the PPE when I'm working with a deceased COVID patient. Also last weekend, one of the patients in the morgue was pretty ripe. No, working with deceased people doesn't bother me. I respond to code blues and rapid response pages, not because I'm awesome, but because I get in line for CPR. And also if someone crashes, we probably need to take them to the CCU. And that's my job. Or if they die, I take them to the morgue. But there's usually a couple hour delay with that. Last night, 2 patients I transported later had codes. One a rapid response, and the other a code blue. I think both lived, for now. Weirdly, I recognize room numbers of patients I transported earlier in the shift. So when I hear their room numbers on the pages, it disturbs me, even though I don't really know those patients. I normally work nights, but I pick up one day shift every week to pad my paycheck. I do 12-hour shifts. Day shift is obviously much busier than night shift, but I'm the only one on nights after 11 PM. So if it gets crazy, which it sometimes does, it's just me handling it all. When I don't have an active assignment, I'm allowed to do whatever I want. I study, read Reddit, even sleep. I have access to nearly every part of the hospital. Hell, yes, I explore the hospital at night when I'm bored at 3 AM. And because I go all over the hospital, I know everyone. We night shift folks are a bit cookie, and there's a bond between us that day shift doesn't have. Also, because the hospital was built in numerous phases over numerous decades, it is a ducking maze. The hardest part of my training was learning where everything is and how to get everywhere. Some elevators only go to certain parts, so there are times when I have to use 2 different elevators for the same transport. A couple weeks ago an episode of The Good Doctor had a patient have a complication, and one of the docs said, "They're crashing. Call a transport team." And someone else hit a big red button on the wall, and then the doctors just moved the patient themselves. It made me laugh out loud. Also, there is no big red button on the wall that summons the transport team. Anyway, I'm sure nobody is going to read this book, but I figure most folks have no idea that transporters exist, or what they do, or how they do it. It's a super fun job and I really have a good time at work. I have full benefits and my health insurance is awesome. Doctor, spend 10% of the day getting a printer to work, 10% waiting for lab results, 10% waiting for a senior to review, 10% pointless paperwork/admin, 20% walking end to end of hospital, 40% actual doctoring. Straight to the point. I like it. I see percentages and I smile. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for more videos.